everybody, and welcome to Miss Jody's Musical Minutes. I'm your host, Miss Jody. So, today I want to talk about this piece of music right here. And we're going to be looking at this piece of music in a lot of episodes because, as you can see, it's got a lot of stuff on it. So we have a lot of things to talk about on this piece. The very first thing we're going to do is we're going to look at the very top of it. We're going to look at right here, the title, and we're going to look at right over here, the composer. Now, you may be thinking to yourself, well, how important is the title and the composer? Well, to us, it's very important. So when we first look at the title, we are looking at whether the piece of music is a symphony. Is it a concerto? What about a march or a waltz or an overture? It really puts us in the right mindset as to what we're about to do. Kind of like if you were going to pick up a new book to read. Is it a murder mystery? Is it a biography? Is it a self-help book? Fiction? Non-fiction? Romance? What to read? Stephen King. Doesn't he write romantic comedies? Or if you were going to choose to go watch a movie, am I going to watch a comedy, a suspense, drama, maybe a sci-fi fantasy? Yeah, this movie. I always love historic documentaries, definitely. It really gets us ready for what we're about to do and puts us in the right frame of mind. So if we have something that says we're going to be playing a symphony, we know that it is a marathon that we're about to do. A symphony is a very large work with multiple movements in it. And so we know that we can't treat it like a sprint. We have to pace ourselves because we have a long journey to go to complete this piece of music. Now, the piece of music that I just showed you was a concerto. When we see a concerto in front of us as orchestra musicians, we know that the spotlight is on the soloist or the soloists. So there might be more than one, but typically a concerto would have just one soloist, and that is who the feature is all about. We as orchestra musicians see something like a concerto in front of us and we think, okay, we are the background. We're the supporting characters in this particular event.
Chica la poma capompa bella mira la Bologna. Chica la poma capompa bella mira la Bologna. Chica la poma capompa bella mira la Bologna. Chica la poma capompa bella bota mira la Bologna.
If we see something that says overture on it, it often means it's a medley of all the different stuff that happens within a larger work, like let's say a musical or an opera or a movie. It would take little snippets of all the music that's incorporated in that larger work, and it introduces you to each of those kinds of music so that you know what's coming up. And later on in the rest of the work, you would hear the full selection. But in an overture, you would just hear little small parts of it. We also have marches, so we know that if a march is in front of us, we're probably going to have something that's a little more rigid, a little more exuberant. And then maybe we have a waltz in front of us, which means it's a more flowing kind of piece where people would have danced and had a wonderful time. So the title is fairly important for us to know. What is it that we're about to accomplish right now? The second thing we look at is the composer. Who wrote it? Who wrote this piece of music? And what does that tell us? Well, it tells us many things. Number one, it tells us about when the music would have been written. And it would have told us what was going on in the world at that time, and where in the world it might have been written, because composers lived in different places.
Oh, Mozart, why are you always working so much? I mean, it's lonely here in Vienna. Why do you always have to be writing and working for the king? Can't we go out and have some fun?
So that gives us a clue in as to what the piece is going to sound like. We also know that composers have different styles of writing. So if I see that there is a piece of music in front of me that has Beethoven's name on it, I'm probably not going to hear this. No, that's definitely not Beethoven. And if I had something in front of me that maybe said Sousa, then I can imagine that it's probably not going to sound like this. Probably not. So when we find out what the composer is, it really gives us a clue in as to what we're going to be performing and what kind of music it is. Now, knowing the title and the composer means that we can go and start doing some research. Now, we've all been trained and we've all learned about music in school and stuff, but it really helps for us to go and listen to some different performances and recordings that other people have done in the past of that work. If you're performing a brand new work, it's very exciting, and you might even need to consult the composer or the composer's notes to find out more about how that piece should be performed. But for all the works that have been performed before, we can go to this great place called YouTube and we can listen to some of it. Now, some of you may be thinking, well, that's cheating. I mean, they'll play it for you and you know exactly what it sounds like. Well, to be honest with you, we could play without listening to YouTube. What YouTube does is it gives us some indication of some different interpretations. We have a responsibility as musicians to perform the music as most genuinely like the composer wanted us to perform it as possible. So we have to look at the page and we have to take all those markings that we see and we have to interpret and determine what did that composer exactly want us to sound like. Well, my interpretation could be slightly different from somebody else's. And if I listen to their interpretation, that might clue me in as to, yeah, you know what? I think that's a better way to play it. Or it might interpret how fast or how slow something's supposed to go so that it's just the right tempo. We have a responsibility to perform that music just the right way because while it might be the first time that I'm playing it, somebody in the audience might find it to be the most cherished, most treasured piece of music they've heard 1,000 times and they know it note for note. So even though it's my first time playing it and my first time experiencing it, I have that responsibility that I need to perform it in a way that really brings out the true meaning of this music for those people who thought that this piece is amazing already and couldn't wait to hear it again. So when we talk about the title and the composer, it really gives us the basic information that we need to start figuring out how are we going to play this piece of music. And like I said before, sometimes we need to consult the composer itself. Sometimes if we're really lucky, the composer is still alive. A lot of us think about a composer as being, the guys with the white wigs, the powdered wigs, and they lived a long time ago. And so we read research about them and we look up what they were doing at that time. And like I said, we look up what kind of person they were and what kind of music they wrote. But we also have composers that are still living today. Lots and lots of composers. So when we're lucky enough to play a piece of music that is written by somebody still alive, we can actually contact the composer themselves. I had the lucky opportunity to contact a composer of flute music when I was performing one of his pieces. His name is Gary Shocker, and he actually lives in New York, and we've spoken a couple times. We even went out and had a beverage together because we were at a performance together. So it's really exciting to talk to the composer and really find out, what did you really want this to sound like? And even past the notes that are written in the music and the composer's notes themselves, like their little side notes, just talking to the composer is amazing because you find out so much more. So in this musical minute, I wanted to share with you that the title and the composer are two of the first things we listen or look at to make sure we know how to perform our music to the best of our ability. Tune in next time.